Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ria Lina.
Hello. Hi, and so lovely to be here. Welcome to the first ever TAP Live. We're here today to celebrate the work of the TV Access Project so far and looking forward to its plans to deliver full inclusion for deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent talent in the TV industry by 2030. For those of you who don't know me, hello, my name is Ria Lina. I'm a comedian, and a few years ago, I was diagnosed with autism. That's right, I have ethnicity and a disability. I'm the BBC's casting dream. And after today, hopefully 10 other TAP members. Hi. As a comedian, I can't always tell people that I have autism. There are still issues with that. It can be tricky in front of an audience. As soon as they find out, they sometimes seize up and go, oh no, we can't laugh at the special girl. And I'm like, it's fine. I have no idea what any of your faces are saying. Although, can I just say, you've actually been hitting on me since I walked on stage. If you could stop, I'm working, but call me after. Generally in life, I still struggle to sometimes tell people that I have autism, although it is handy to have in one's back pocket, just in case I accidentally offend someone. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry I have autism, but my goodness, you're ugly. Now, before we start, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. Emergency exits are at the back of the auditorium on the left and the right, and in the event of emergency, stewards will lead you to a place of safety. As you'll see, we have live captioning. I'm sorry if I'm standing in front of that right now. We have live captioning, and we also have BSL interpretation here on stage. TAP is an alliance of 10 broadcasters and streamers working to achieve a television industry where no deaf, disabled, and/or neurodivergent talent is ever excluded. But they aren't doing this alone. At the heart, there is ambitious, unprecedented co-creation between disabled people and the wider industry to deliver sustainable solutions with buy-in for and from everyone. So, the 10 TAP members have lots of partners they are working with. And if you would like to know more about these pan-industry bodies and disabled-led organizations who are working as an essential part of TAP, you can use this QR code to get more information and links to all of their websites. Literally, you can do it now. Yes, some people, if you want to, grab your phone. It will work. We've tested it from the back of the auditorium. Grab that now. We will, of course, make that available afterwards if you can't. A little later, I'm going to welcome many people from those partner organizations as part of our panel discussion about the progress that's being made towards disability inclusion in TV through TAP. But before that, I think it's safe to say that we probably wouldn't even be here, and TAP might not exist if it wasn't for a certain McTaggart lecture at the Edinburgh TV Festival in 2021. With his blistering critique of how TV had failed disabled people utterly and totally, writer Jack Thorne sent a rocket through the industry, compelling us, you, to recognize the stark truth that TV is still an industry in which disabled people aren't employed to tell disabled stories. And when they are, their treatment can be devastating. Well, it's 18 months on, and here to tell us how he's feeling now about disability inclusion in TV, I'm really pleased to welcome, with his opening remarks, the wonderful Jack Thorne.
Hello. Thank you all for being here today for a celebration of all that the TV Access Project is and an examination of how we keep that celebration going. I can't tell you how exciting it is for me, and I know I speak on behalf of a huge number of people. A couple of years ago, 18 months ago, I got a chance to speak at the Edinburgh TV Festival and said how angry I was at the failure of TV to tell disabled stories and include disabled creatives. Since then, as a result of the tap, tap, tap of change, we are looking at a remarkably different landscape. TAP has been and is looking at a whole spectrum of issues, and we know how lucky we are to have our 10 broadcast partners leaning in and helping us create this revolution, a revolution in accessible practices. There are now over 150 people making change happen in our different work streams, and this extends from senior management at Leavesden Studios to Disney Plus commissioners, to Channel 4 executives, to disabled writers, directors, producers, production managers and technicians. But it has only just begun, and it is not done yet. Virtue signalling is becoming virtuous practice, but the fruit is not yet off the trees. And I want to remind people before we begin today why this matters. The COVID pandemic showed us an ableism in society which is deeply troubling. Deaths were divided into two. Disabled people were openly told they'd be denied care. Disabled people were told they didn't matter. We will not fix this schism in society without fixing how society views disability. And this is where the empathy box of TV should be going to work. Authorship is shared. We don't just need disabled writers, we need disabled makeup artists, production managers, runners and grips. At the moment, the numbers of disabled people in these jobs is pitiful, and so of course the stories getting told are minimal. TV needs to lead. It hasn't in the past, it will in the future. This room is the starting point of great change, and it is beautiful. But we must keep our foot on the gas, because if we don't, that ableism will get uglier and uglier. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our broadcast partners, all of whom are going to introduce themselves and who have taken us this far and are going to take us much, much further.
My name's Dan Grabiner. I'm the head of originals at Amazon Studios in the UK and Northern Europe.
I'm Reema Sakhan. I'm Chief Executive of BritBox International.
I'm Zai Bennett. I'm the MD of content for Sky UK and Ireland.
The TV Access project is unique because it's galvanizing. You know, it was kicked off by Jack with his phenomenal McTaggart lecture, and it's a cross-industry initiative.
I think what's really special about TAP is the sheer scale and breadth of its membership.
To put clear and measurable outcomes as their primary goal.
I'm Charlotte Moore. I'm Chief Content Officer at the BBC.
I'm Kevin Ligo, Managing Director of Media Entertainment at ITV.
My name is Ben Frau and I am the Chief Content Officer for Paramount UK.
There's never been such a concerted effort to really change the game for everybody.
When all the broadcasters join together, we ought to be much more stronger.
Everyone at the top is joined together to make the change. But the key initiative is coming from those people at the centre who are demanding the change.
But the big difference here is that it's disabled people with lived experience and expertise working hand in glove with broadcasters, with studios, with literally as a pan-industry collaboration.
I'm Ian Katz, Chief Content Officer at Channel 4.
I'm Bobby Hayne. I'm the Managing Director of Broadcast for STV.
The key thing is that it creates structural change, not a short-term change in the way the industry is behaving.
We can have a sort of standardised practice of what's best for access in all areas.
We have to change the way the business works and make inclusion for all a fundamental part of how our industry operates.
Getting our physical production spaces right is critical for the future of the industry and its accessibility.
Our studios, our production houses, our post-production houses, our outside broadcast, these all have to be properly accessible spaces. And we're not going to be a fully inclusive industry until that happens.
I am Richard Watcham. I'm the Chief Creative Officer of UK TV.
I'm Liam Keelan. I'm SVP of Original Content for Disney EMEA.
When I think about funding, I think about the extraordinary and unfortunate way in which we've effectively disincentivized producers to work with people with disabilities. because we've not recognised the costs as broadcasters and we've not helped fund them.
I'd mentioned things like access coordinators, where we've introduced those, made them a fundamental part of the production, and you can see change happening.
I think the 5 A's are such a clever way of summing up what the challenges are, but also offering businesses in the industry a way to get through and make a difference.
So that we've all got a standard approach to this issue, and not just saying we're going to do it, but actually monitoring how well that is being applied.
I'm particularly excited about the talent progression and retention, because while we have lots of different schemes at entry levels which get people in, which are great, it's really the senior levels we need to affect change to have a long-lasting effect in our industry.
I suppose the lasting legacy would be that we're not talking about this as an issue anymore.
I really hope that it has a legacy of being a much fairer playing field for everybody across the broadcasting industry.
I think we are talking about some of the most basic human rights here.
Making sure that we have access to all our creative wealth of talent in the UK, including disabled talent, is really key to representing a really modern and inclusive Great Britain.
I passionately believe that, diversity is the only way forward, and you've got to lead by example. You just got to get on and do it. Stop talking about it, do it.
And thank you to the senior leaders of the 10 TAP members, many of whom are here today, but also to Neil Benn, who made that VT for us. And can we also give another round of applause, please, to Jack Thorne for his speech. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to invite the panelists to get into some of the detail about what's been happening with TAP. So if I could please invite to the stage Caroline, Lawrence, Miranda, Julie, and Deborah. Please give them a round of applause. Welcome. So let's get to some introductions for those that don't know you. If I could start with you, Caroline.
Hello, my name is Caroline O'Neill. I'm an Assistant Commissioner in the BBC in daytime and the Co-Director of Deaf and Disabled People in TV. I'm a white woman with short dark hair. I've got a bold orange and red floral dress on. I'm a deaf person and a sign language user, so the voice you hear is that of my sign language interpreter.
Thank you. Lawrence, hi.
Hi, I'm Lawrence Clark. I'm a screenwriter. I'm a member of the TAP core group, and I'm the chair of Triple C Dank, which is a disabled-led organisation working to remove barriers for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people in TV, film and the arts. I'm a middle-aged white man with brown, slightly grey and short hair, wearing a red check shirt and blue jeans.
Thank you, Lawrence. Hi, Julie.
Hello. Hi, I'm Julie Fernandez. I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I'm blonde and I'm wearing a, did we say salmon? We worked it out as salmon earlier. A salmon dress. So I've been working in TV for over 30 years, not bad for 21. Predominantly in front of the camera, but over the last 18 months or so, I've been an access coordinator, which is an absolute joy. I'm co-director and owner of Bridge 06, an agency for placing access coordinators into as many productions as we can get.
Wonderful. Miranda.
Hi, Ria.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miranda Wayland. I'm the head of international content and strategy for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility for Prime Video and Amazon Studios. I'm currently wearing a zebra print shirt, black skirt. I am a black woman with wild afro hair that I'm loving at the moment as a starlighter. And my role consists of working to drive greater inclusion and representation across Europe and globally.
Amazing. And finally, Deborah, hello.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
I'm Deborah Williams. I'm the Chief Executive of Creative Diversity Network. I'm wearing some clothes and some socks, but no shoes. I have a background in performing, writing, theatre, television, film, and it's my fault all this happened, really. So you feel free to blame me. We collect data at CDN, we look after Diamond, and we publish on an annual basis the state of the industry data. And one of the big things was there was a lot of underrepresentation of disabled people when we started doing this in 2017. And we threw it out into the world, and ta-da.
Amazing. And I'm wearing a floral shirt, pink trousers, and very sparkly shoes. And I am mixed race Filipino Caucasian. We also have BSL interpretation, so just a reminder to the panel to please speak clearly and try not to speak over each other. Thank you. So to start, I'd like to start with you, Miranda, with some questions about the current status quo and sort of the structure of TAP. If I could come to you first. Earlier this year, Prime Video and Channel 4 released the findings of an industry-wide survey which looked into current access provision and disability inclusion at broadcasters, streamers, and production companies. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you found out?
It was a great opportunity for us to get a better understanding of the landscape of our industry in terms of access needs. And from that, we had 105 different respondents, so giving us a good, rich sample size to be able to understand where we could amplify our efforts. I think there were some mixed concerns that came through. I was really positive to see that people understood the importance of disability. However, the flip side is that there was a lack of real comprehension in terms of action and progression and retention in terms of working with disabled talent and helping them to sustain a career in our industry came through. It was really encouraging to see that almost 75% of those who responded had worked with disabled talent in the last 12 months. Really great to see that. But again, the flip side of that was that our environments were not inclusive. We weren't creating the right structures for best practice. And very few of us really understood the legal framework in which to meet the Equality Act for 2010. So again, there are some mixed economies in terms of the value that disabled talent brings to our industry, the infrastructure that we have in place to sustain that wealth of talent that's out there, and also having a greater understanding of the provision that's currently in place by all the broadcasters and streamers who are all doing some amazing work, but perhaps we need to amplify that so there's a consistency of knowledge across the business. There's also some health and safety concerns, which then came through the survey. Again, stuff that we've been working on since that was on. And equally, a clear action plan that helps us to not just meet the requirements of the Equality Act, but to amplify our efforts, truly making our environments accessible and inclusive. So a rich wealth of data and information which is available for everyone to see, and a great starting point to which a number of our working streams have been based on.
That's wonderful. So people are open to it, they're willing to do it, but it sounds like the how is the problem. People don't know how. So how has that informed the work of TAP, and what sort of steps can we take from there or take away from that?
So your cue card that you showed earlier gives everybody the opportunity to look at some of the work that we've done. Nice.
Okay, we can...
But you can also see that we've created working streams across a number of areas, looking at retention and progression, looking at our 5 A's as that framework for us to be able to drive competencies across the business. Funding was also something else that came up as a real issue and concern. And again, we recognise that the weight of some of the streamers and broadcasters is often offset with those small indies, so we want to work in partnership to find some resolutions there. There's data collection, and I know Deborah has mentioned about the powerhouse that CDN is in terms of being able to capture that data and be able to make some informed decisions with those numbers behind. So it's been really nice seeing the various working groups coming together, finding ways in which we can look at these individual issues, which when compounded makes it almost impossible for disabled talent to work in our industry, and also finding ways to work collaboratively to be able to embed those changes in our organisations, both for ourselves and the industry overall.
That sounds amazing.
It's been great, girl.
So we're more to be done, but it sounds like we're on the right path. We're going to talk with Lawrence a little bit more about funding in a minute. So work is slowly happening, but I think the key is that people are open to it and willing and actively want to do it. So again, we will try and get that QR code out to you if you didn't get it before, so that you can have access to all of this information after the panel. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Miranda. I think that leads us actually very nicely to Caroline, because Miranda, you mentioned the 5 A's, which are quite huge. But Caroline, can you tell us a little bit more about the 5 A's? Remind us what they are. These are sort of industry standards that TAP has developed.
Yes, absolutely. So they've come up on screen now, so you're able to have a look at them. So we'll start with anticipate. So the idea behind this is to anticipate and plan that you will be working with disabled people on a regular basis. So anticipate that will actually happen. Don't wait until it does happen to then make some plans. Ask. So this means don't assume anything about anybody. Have those sensitive conversations that you need to have and ask everybody that you're working with what their access requirements are. Assess, the next one. So that means be consistent and clear and transparent about how accessible you actually are. Moving on to adjust. So adjust means that we'll be committed to delivering what is needed. So consistently ahead of time giving people what they need and making sure that you're fully inclusive for disabled talent. And finally, advocate. So that means that you have a high standard for yourself and everybody in your team. So everybody celebrates disabled talent and advocates and champions them. So those are the 5 A's.
That's wonderful. And just to, can I just clarify assess from what you said? So assessing is about assessing yourself and being honest about how accessible you are.
Yeah, so assess means it's quite open to interpretation, I would say. So assess could mean look at your workspace, have a look around and see how accessible that actually is. You know, your set or your location, your offices. So it means assessing the environment. It could mean being clear about what the office space actually has available. It could mean assessing the work environment or your staff and making sure that the conversation is clear and transparent about what's needed and what's available.
That's wonderful to clarify, thank you, as opposed to assessing others' needs. So it's asking others what their needs are is the ask, and assessing where you're at is assess. So can you give us some examples of what those principles might look like in practice, perhaps from your own experience?
Well, I've just started a new job. You know, I've been very fortunate that I've had great access conversations right from the start. So it means that I feel capable to arrive and just to do what I need to do the job, the same as everybody else. I've got everything at my fingertips. I've got sign language interpreters. I've had clear conversations about my expectations for the job and what I need to do my job. And any additional adjustments, which means it's been a really smooth process. And that's what the 5 A's are about, making sure that people arrive at work empowered and feeling that they're able to do their job, not feeling like they're disadvantaged or that they have to beg for what they need, that everybody's on an equal playing field and it's an equal experience for all.
That sounds great. Now, Miranda, I think you mentioned training going forward, especially across the industry, to help people get to grips with the 5 A's in practice. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So TAP have created clear goals. So before Edinburgh TV Festival, the 10 TAP members will have 100 people, senior leaders, commissioning editors. There'll be a full training program on the 5 A's, so they feel really empowered that they're able to spread that message to their teams. And also, Going forward, we'll be developing materials. So any existing courses out there, we can incorporate these materials into them to add to their training. And we're also working with Screen Skills. And with them, we're setting up a pilot where we're trying to provide specific training related to the 5 A's. So this will be role specific. And it also means that it will be in-depth training. So we're going to show how these 5 A's can then be translated onto an actual production.
That's great. So we've got the top, you were just saying, to recap, you have the top level, the 100 commissioning editors that are going to get specific training at the Edinburgh TV Festival, but then there will also be some screen skills training available for people working in production. But essentially what we would hope to find is that when they're talking to each other, these 5 A's are coming up in that conversation from both sides.
That's right. You know, we're wanting it to be part of everything, really. So anybody who works in TV at a senior level should be aware of the 5 A's, and they should be putting it into their productions from the start. You know, from the commissioning point, we should be thinking about the 5 A's.
Can I ask from your personal experience, because I think it's been true with mine, I have found that those productions that do go through this process, I find that everybody, and it isn't just those that identify as deaf, disabled, or neurodivergent, find it a better work environment because everybody's needs have been considered. Have you found that in your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think the word access is really interesting because it's not always about just deaf, disabled, or neurodiversity. It's everybody in every part of their lives who might require access, whether disabled, deaf, and neurodiverse, whether you're a carer, a parent, you know, everybody has access requirements in some form. So we need that for work-life balance for everyone. That's what we should be striving for in the industry.
Amazing. You heard it here first. It's for everybody. It's good for everybody. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Caroline. I'd like to turn, therefore, to Julie. It moves nicely from, we were talking about access, to access roles, Julie. One of the 5 A's is about making sure adjustments are made to ensure that the deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent talent are fully included and can give the best in their role, whether on or off screen. But as we've just heard, that can be useful for everybody on set. So I assume that roles like access coordinators are key to that process. Can you explain to us a little bit more about what that work involves? Because I think we're all familiar now, I would hope, with the idea of an intimacy coordinator. That came up a few years ago, especially with the Me Too campaign, but now we're hearing this term access coordinator. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
So an access coordinator's responsibility is to work with the entire production company. Ideally, you come on at green light. The sooner you come on, the better. You work in the pre-production stages, then the filming stages, and then the post-production stages. In the pre-production stages, an AC will support the entire production company in a whole range of things. They will look at the script in terms of if there's a disabled character and they've written that character to do X or Y, is that doable with the actor that they've got on board? Making the writer's room accessible, making the casting accessible, and then working with all of the heads of departments, the stunt team, the production secretary, the location manager, everyone who is already incredibly busy. And it is our role as an access coordinator to work with everybody to put access requirements in place. So we know that around the world, 20% of the world population is DDN, deaf, disabled, neurodivergent. So we can pretty much guarantee that 20% of your production company will be DDN. A lot of those people will never have disclosed before for fear of being discriminated against. So when you employ a disabled access coordinator, and that is really key, you have someone who has the lived experience, understands the nuance, knows the language, and has the ability to have one-on-one conversations with cast, crew, and production, everyone, and work on a one-on-one basis with anyone who discloses that they're DDN, puts a whole package together once they've met to discuss their access requirements, gives that to the production company, and then works with all the heads of department to make it accessible to that individual. And that could be really simple stuff like the amount of people I've worked as an access coordinator for who are dyslexic And it's really simple. Once you work out what font style they like, what size they like, and what piece of paper colour background they like, that's like 2-3 clicks on a computer. You can arrange that with a production. And then you're talking all the way through to accessible toilets for wheelchair users. So there's a whole process that you can go through. Then you're on set during the filming process. That's really helpful. I think Lawrence can attest to that from his own amazing show called Perfect. Having an access coordinator on during filming just helps everything to run smoothly. And then in post-production, it's all about access advice in the editing phases, but also in any marketing and PR you're doing. Are you using the right language and supporting with all of that? You basically bring an access coordinator in on minimal days to start with, and you can build that up. People think it's expensive. It really isn't. Once you start putting systems and requirements in place to help people to be creatively brilliant, your production is going to shine, and that is the most important thing.
You covered a lot there, so I'm going to break it down a little bit. But first of all, you say that the access coordinator needs to speak to everyone.
Yep.
But I assume that they're not just there for those that identify as DDN. Anybody can come in and say, I have this.
It could be a parent, for example, who has care responsibilities because they have a child that has a health condition, or they might have a parent that's going through hospital treatments and they need to be available, say, every Friday. So, initially it's for people who are DDN, but actually I think it's for everybody.
It's for everybody, but the point is that right now we're not seeing that role across production. And we want to.
Slowly we're getting there.
We're starting to get there.
Slowly we're getting there. And the production companies that myself and the ACs that Bridge 06 agents for, the feedback has been really positive. And in fact, in vast majority of cases of the productions we've AC'd on, the non-disabled people without lived experience have gone, oh, I get it now, this makes sense, we want you back for the next lot of productions, which is amazing.
That's great to hear. So is there any other feedback that you've had from people who've worked with ACs?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question because there's two lots of feedback. So you get really positive feedback from people who are DDN that you've AC supported. For those like Lawrence and I who are quite confident in ourselves as disabled people, we've got no problem communicating what our access requirements are. But for a lot of people who have never disclosed before, it's worrying. You're scared you're going to lose that job. But when you communicate with an access coordinator, we will allay those fears. And it's been amazing watching those people go, starting being fearful, but then admitting it and then having their access requirements met, which they can then get on with their job, which is what we want. Also, interestingly, is working with all the production team members who are not disabled and who don't have lived experience. So, for example, I work a lot with production assistants and secretaries, especially when it comes to like booking accessible hotels. And they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, Jules, it's great. I've booked the disabled room. We've got the wet room. I'm like, marvellous, but I still would like you, please, to get the hotel on the mobile phone to video the disabled room and wet room. And I want to see that video just to double check. Oh, no, but they said it was accessible. I know, but would you just do that for me? Yes, of course. Comes back, look at the video. No shower seat for the disabled person in the wet room. No this, that, and the other. And then I go back and like, right, well, this is what we need to do. But what's been really interesting is that the non-disabled production team members without lived experience go, I didn't realise it was that bad. And it's not the disability that's bad. It's that the business community, whether that's a hotel, whether that's a restaurant or a location, just hasn't taken the disability discriminations, that part in building regulations seriously. So many businesses say, oh, but we've reasonably adjusted, which means they've done the barest of minimum. And that has a knock-on effect because we as a business just want to be able to pick up the phone and go, right, we want that hotel room. Is it accessible? Yes. Do you have everything? Yes. You can't guarantee it. You've got to double check everything. So watching non-disabled people's reactions has been fascinating because they're like, oh, I didn't realise it was that bad. You know, they told me it was accessible. I know, but let's all work together to persuade the business community that the purple pound is worth £279 billion a year, what part of that don't you want to tap into?
I think that's wonderful. And I also was interested to hear that you're saying that the accesspreneurs should come on at the beginning at Greenlight and even work their way through the casting process, which is obviously someone who's front of camera, that is of interest to me. But not just to identify characters that may have needs or need, because I noted, was it not Coronation Street now has a cobble-free route?
Does it? Okay.
As a result?
One of my closest friends is a...
It might not be on camera, but it's there.
I'll have to double check. I don't know. But
yeah.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
It's true.
Is it true?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
As a result, in order to help people, yeah.
No longer.
Get around. So, it's wonderful to hear that is the thought process that's happening. Thank you. I'd like to turn now, therefore, to, well, speaking of talent, I'd like to turn to Deborah, because you're going to speak to us about talent retention and progression. Miranda mentioned that the industry access survey showed that disabled talent aren't being proactively supported to develop professionally and even stay in the industry. So what does your CDN Diamond data tell us about the situation with senior, deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent talent in the industry?
It's bad.
It's bad.
Basically. Next week we're publishing the Sixth Cut report. And some of the data in that, it's a shame that there has been little to no progress. We've moved from, 4.5% to 4.7% in 6 years in terms of senior role representation for disabled people. And a lot of the development, and that's off-screen, and on-screen development is mainly in non-scripted spaces. So it is about, going out and finding a disabled person for a show or any of those sorts of things, as opposed to the deep investment that you need in order to make sure that, all the things that the other panel members have talked about are invested in from the beginning, so people can feel like they have a safe working space, they have a job that they can enjoy and engage with, and it doesn't, the onus isn't on them as a disabled, deaf or neurodivergent person to teach and to explain and to justify spending their time doing that. Instead, they can spend their time doing the jobs that they're employed to do and contracted to do and want to do. And I think that what's interesting that has come up, there are 3 elements under the Equality Act around disability discrimination. There is communication, so it's how you talk to people and how you share information. There is physical, which has been discussed as well, but the other one is attitude. So there is an issue around the attitude of and expectations of disabled, deaf and neurodivergent people in talent in the industry, on-screen, off-screen, scripted, unscripted. The bar is incredibly low. And when that bar is incredibly low, for a lot of people, it's really quite challenging if they see highly talented, highly efficient, highly competent deaf, disabled or neurodivergent people, because they don't understand that. It doesn't commute. So a lot of people end up being pulled backwards to the level of understanding that the people who are employing them and the businesses that are employing them, as opposed to being elevated and amplified and people moving forwards with them. And that's one of the things that's coming through in our data and has been for the last 3 or 4 years.
So are we seeing a literal drop-off, people leaving the industry at certain points before they get to senior levels?
Yeah, the drop-off is also around, everything that's been discussed. It's incredibly hard to be a freelancer in this industry. It's incredibly hard to be a freelancer anywhere. And the last 3 or 4 years have shown us that freelancers are the blood, sweat and tears of our industry. And if your access requirements aren't being met, if expectations are low of you, if your support systems are taken away, whether that's in social or environmentally or in terms of governance, all of those things happening, as an individual, you have to make a decision about, is this the best environment for me to be in? Do I feel, like I want to go on, like I can go on? And do I feel welcomed within the industry? And for most people, you spend 3 to 5 years doing that, and then you stop because you've got to pay your rent, you've got to eat, you've got to do the things that you want to do as a human being. It's a human right. And if your human rights aren't being met, then you need to find somewhere else to go. And unfortunately, the nature of our industry means that a lot of deaf, disabled, neurodivergent people will stop and go, and go somewhere else and work somewhere else. And then that's just the off-screen. So if you then think about on-screen, where representation is, as Jack had identified, is either low or unaspirational and unambitious around disabled people and what capability and capacity and what disabled and deaf and neurodivergent people can do and bring to the space, then do you feel like it's a space for you, a business for you, and an environment for you? Not all people do. Some people do, and they just keep going, but that's because it's what they do for a living. It's it's in their soul. But for a lot of people, after 5 years of trying, and if you keep getting your head bashed against the same wall, you have to think, can I keep doing this? Can I keep doing this? Can I keep doing this?
Yes, for 0.2% of improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, again, casting, as someone who watches television a lot of the time, I see a lot of times where I go, that could have been cast differently. That character didn't have to be.
Yeah, it's
there were a lot of
absolutely.
there were a lot more white, which is why I think it's very interesting that we're bringing access coordinators in at the casting at the very beginning to say, what can what can this character be?
And the editorial conversation, which is sacred space because it's like this is us and this is what we do. But I think if you open up the editorial conversation, the things that will flow from it. I come from theatre, and as a result of the work that we did in theatre, you had the Paralympic Games, you had the Cultural Olympiad, you had all of that stuff that people never imagined and never saw. And that wasn't just, the small theatre community or the arts community in this country. That was a global representation of disabled people, talented disabled people doing things that no one ever expected or thought was possible. But that was because they opened up the space and went, okay, what could we do if we tried? And I think that the Access Project is a part of is the critical mass point now where we go, okay, what can we do when we try? And when we come together, work together, what is possible? And I think that's the beauty of the position we now find ourselves in.
So what is TAP's solution, or what are some of the things we're working on?
I think
to change that
attitude is, well, first of all, as Caroline identified, the 5 A's. So CDN are designing that first tranche of training for the first 100 commissioners and senior leaders across the 10 members. CDN are designing that. Now, it's not me sitting in a room going, I think this is what you should be doing. It's 2 young disabled people who went through training with us are designing that and building that, and the set of standards that will hopefully elevate all of those A's within conversation and make people feel comfortable and confident in doing that. That's the first thing. And then to have intermediary and advanced understanding of what that means, and then breaking it down to roles and breaking it down to on and off screen and genres. That's the other thing about this industry. It goes very deep. So everything has to be staged and processed and structured in ways that are breaking down inherent discrimination and lack of understanding that have been built up over a long period of time. And that's why, 2030 is a good goal, and it's really important that that's happening. The other things that TAP is doing, the results of the survey that Amazon and Channel 4 did, the conversations now about post-production houses, about facilities, about what is an accessible dressing room, what is an accessible location, all of these conversations and questions being asked about physical spaces, but also what is your attitude towards that? How do you feel if, when you see a disabled person being supported? For most people, that question doesn't get asked. It's brushed under the carpet. It's like, so breaking down people building grudges or a lack of understanding. So all of those things are what TAP can do and are doing at the moment, is getting everybody in the room to have the conversations, to elevate not just what TAP are doing, but what the industry can do, what disability inclusion means. When we started this work, in 2017, there wasn't really a definition of disability inclusion across the industry. So having to think about what disability inclusion meant and how was it different to inclusion, and was it different to disability, and how you create things together and build things together. And that's, that's what CDN does, and it's why, we love what we're doing, and it's what the beauty of TAP is creating things together, learning together, growing together, amplifying and disseminating that in ways that, are just unheard of and unthought of.
Well, that sounds great, but it's all going to cost money. So that brings me to Lawrence.
Not all of it.
No, you can change your attitude for free. But some of the anticipating, adjusting, and advocating might cost something. How are we funding this, Lawrence?
So I lead the TAP work stream on budgets and spreadsheets, which is not as boring as it sounds. But I think, as Deborah was saying, this industry, lifeblood is freelancers. And because of the short-term nature of contracts, we've just not had the numbers of disabled people working in the industry in the same way as other areas of work. And so these adjustments haven't naturally been made over time. But yeah, not all adjustments cost money. Sometimes it's about building in regular breaks or adjusting working times. But yeah, some do cost money. And the thing is, this industry needs to stump up, put its money where its mouth is, and fund this. This is not a poor industry, but by any means, if we can afford to pay huge salaries and fly people around the world, then we can afford to pay people's access requirements. And sometimes, there's money to be saved in doing this stuff right from the start. The first of the 5 A's is anticipate. And by just anticipating that you will have deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people working on your production and planning with that in mind from the start, that's a much more cost-effective way of working.
So how does, so we've heard that not everything costs money, but there will be some costs.
Yeah.
How does this say a small production company working with disabled talent and contributors who might have complex and or expensive access requirements go about paying for it? What's the reality?
So there's really two things there. There will be some things that are the production's responsibility to pay for. Our group has been working, what we have in mind, that every production budget should have a line for access, and that starting figure in that line should not be zero. We should be anticipating. It's actually in the Equality Act. The Equality Act says that you got to anticipate making usable adjustments. Therefore, to not have that budget line with some money in it from the start is going, I don't mean to get heavy, but it is going against the law. So we have that. We also have access to work, which is a government scheme.
Did you just, did you feel the temperature change in the room when you said that?
It's probably simpler. I'm going to illustrate some of the barriers there. This wheelchair that I'm sitting in now, on the 22nd of December, I on my way out with my son to the cinema, and the left wheel fell off completely, which I took as a sign that it's probably wearing out and needs replacing. So I applied to Access to Work on the 4th of January for funding to replace it. The email confirming that funding came last Friday, so it took that long. And in order to get the funding, I had to tell a little white lie and say that I'd not had it fixed. So they believe I've been doing my job with 3 wheels for the first 6 months of this year. And so please don't tell them otherwise.
Please welcome our next speaker from Access to Work. No, but I think a lot of people in this room can appreciate the difficulties of Access to Work because it doesn't work for short-term freelance because of how long it takes. So we need that upfront investment in terms of having that access line in the budget in productions being, as you said, not zero.
And also, TAP is going to be running a pilot within the industry where people are assessed but by a third party and supported to submit the Access to Work application. However, the costs are paid up front much quicker so that they don't have to wait the 5 months for a fourth wheel.
Yeah.
And then that money will be recouped back for Access to Work in time. So we're really hoping this pilot will make a big difference in terms of getting more people working in the industry.
I think that's an important thing to know. I don't think a lot of employers realize that they can apply themselves for Access to Work and have it paid back to themselves. It isn't necessarily the responsibility of the individual to apply on their own behalf.
Yes.
And I think so greater awareness of that would be useful. However, Access to Work can be capped. What happens then?
It can, and yes. So the rules like what was a full-time worker that needs a BSL interpreter, that they'll pay for 4 out of the 5 days, etc. So we're looking at other ways in which there can be top-up funding, other funding. I've just applied Screen Skills, have a bursary, and that bursary now covers access requirements. Again, it's capped at 2,000 or 3,000, but that's a potential solution that we're exploring to fill that gap.
Sorry, so just to clarify, there is a bursary or we're working on creating a bursary?
There is a bursary.
There is a bursary.
It's the Screen Skills bursary. And it prioritises freelancers and people can apply for access costs to that.
Great.
But I've just applied literally yesterday for the little bit of money that Access to Work won't pay for my wheelchair. So I'm testing it out.
Wow. So just to clarify, Access to Work wouldn't even pay for an entire wheel. Okay. Great. So that's the Screen Skills bursary, which is that part of the QR code? Is that going to? It will be also, so there is Screen Skills bursary. Please look that up later. You can find details of that via the QR code that, as I said, we will get to you if you didn't catch it at the beginning. Thank you, Lawrence. Now, we are nearly out of time, but before we finish, we want to hear from each of you again. Miranda, what are you most excited about when you hear about all this work that TAP is doing?
I'm hugely excited and encouraged. I think what we've heard the panel talk about is the individual efforts being made in the working groups. So we've talked about how can we have the earliest interventions. For me, it's at development, it's at script, it's at pilot. If we're actively asking our content creators, what are you going to do to drive increased representation of disabled talent, disabled stories, that then enables us to have a conversation about funding. It then enables us to talk about access coordinators. It then enables us to talk about retention and progression. So from the very offset, when a program idea is coming into us as broadcasters and streamers, we have a duty of responsibility to say, what are we going to do about disabled representation? Not every program needs to have disabled representation in it, but I need you to think about it. I need you to be clear about the efforts and the thought process that's been put into your programs that is inclusive of everyone.
Great. Although I think you should ask yourself, if it doesn't, why doesn't it?
That's another good follow-up question. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. What makes TAP different and means it's going to have a lasting impact?
Well, often when you work in TV, as a disabled person, you're the only person in the room that's trying to reinforce things for yourself, trying to get access to your rights. And the beauty of TAP is that we've got a group of amazing disabled, deaf, neurodivergent talent working together with lived experience of the industry, coming together with 10 broadcasters and streamers to create lasting change. And, this collaboration is on this scale, has never happened before. It's amazing what we're trying to achieve. So I'm really excited to be part of this change.
Thank you. Julie, is this a genuine turning point from your POV?
So I've been working in TV and film for 30 years. Can you believe it? Look at how long I'm... And I really, genuinely didn't think I would live to see this day. In fact, I have coined it, and for all you dirty minds out there, BJ and AJ. So before Jack and after Jack. Had to get that right. And I really genuinely didn't think it would change in my lifetime, but I genuinely think it is. It's by no means perfect. I cannot believe we're still having conversations about finances and the reasons why we need to be including our stories. They're amazing stories. But yeah, there's a change coming, and it's all culminating to when we get to Edinburgh in August, of all this work with all these amazing groups and individuals. And really, thank you to Jack.
Thank you. Deborah, we've talked about the 5 A's quite a bit. Which of these is the most important, or something we collectively need to work on the most, if you had to pick one?
I'm not going to pick one.
2?
I'm not going to pick 2.
You're going to pick 5? You can't, okay.
I'll do all 5. It's okay, I'll do all 5, don't worry. So I think, the critical ones for me are, as identified earlier, are anticipate and ask. If you're not anticipating, then what are you doing? And if you're not asking, how dare you? If you ask everyone, every day you're asking questions, and this industry is full of asking questions and wanting to know. We're inquiring minds, and that's the point of what we do. So a big part of it is that to anticipate and to ask. And, the law gives you legislation that says you can employ disabled people. You don't have to go through all the gubbins that you need to in terms of whether that's recruitment, all of that stuff. There is a piece of legislation, there is a clause that says if you want to employ a disabled person, you go out there and you can employ a disabled person. So everybody who says you want to employ disabled people, go out and employ disabled people. The law is on your side. You're not breaking the law. You're actually following the law. So I think that's what I would say in terms of the A's. I think the other one is the advocating. I think the more people advocate, the more people that are advocating, the less pressure on the deaf, disabled or neurodivergent person to constantly be at people's doors or, you know, the only person in the room. I think taking away that sense of being the only person in the room, feeling isolated or feeling like you've got to say something because no one else is saying it, I think that's where advocating becomes, you know, a collective and collaborative responsibility for everyone.
Likewise, if you're in the room and there is only one person in the room, listen to them. I think it's the flip side of that, because that's what I've come up against is the attitude.
Absolutely, the attitude. Lose the attitude.
Yeah. That's not one of the 5 A's.
Is that not?
No. Assume an attitude, different A's.
No, okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Lawrence, what examples have you come across of the work of TAP already having a tangible impact?
I mean, I think the biggest one is we're suddenly sexy. Jack made us sexy. I don't know how long it's going to last, but we need to make the best of it while we've got it, really. It's made a huge impact having access to coordinators on productions, having, you know, having the conversations. Like 5 years ago, it would be hard to imagine disability being such a wide conversation across the industry as it currently is. And from a personal perspective, I've worked in writers' rooms over the last year that were all disabled writers, doing another one in a couple of weeks. That just would have been unthinkable not that long ago.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. This is all sounding really positive, and I am very excited to hear what will happen between now and Edinburgh, which is in August, and how the roadmap will lay out on the route to full inclusion by 2030. That's all a big picture, structural change, which is much needed, but that change also starts with us here in the room as individuals. So before we leave, I have an exercise for all of us. There are going to be, you've heard a lot of practical advice and solutions today, and hopefully been prompted and inspired to think about how you yourself can add to the change. So what we're going to do is we are circulating postcards and pens, and I want everyone in the room to write down one change that they personally are willing to commit to in terms of making these changes, and anything that you've heard, any small thing that you feel that you can personally do to support better disability inclusion in TV. I'm also going to ask the panelists to fill in a postcard as well, and it is an actual postcard, which means I want you to put your address on that, your name and your address, because what we're going to do is we're going to collect them in, and then we're going to send them to you in a couple of weeks to remind you what you promised to do, okay? All right? Ooh, that's another A, accountability. I love it. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just have a think about what you yourself feel that you can contribute and what you yourself can pledge to do. We'll have a little music while that's playing, and also while the panelists are filling in theirs.
Hi. Hello. I hope you've all had a chance to fill in your postcards. Please feel free, once you've addressed them to yourselves, to pass them to stewards at either end of your rows. But before we go, very quickly, just to inspire you a little bit, I would love to hear what each of our panelists have pledged. Just to... I know. You knew that. Did you know? It's in my script. But
it's actually not in the script.
It's in my script. I have a whole card. But we would love to hear what your pledges are, just to send our audience away with some inspiration. Can I start with you, Caroline?
Oh, okay. So I pledge to become a broader expert in disability. So, I know a lot about my own disability, deafness, but I'd like to expand that knowledge so I can become more accessible and create a more inclusive environment as an Assistant Commissioner.
Thank you. Lawrence.
I'm gonna continue working with my work stream to get a joint agreement on how to fund access that all 10 of the broadcasters and streamers who are partners in TAP can sign up to by Edinburgh TV Festival.
Wow. Wow.
Good luck.
That's incredible. Julie.
I pledge to carry on being polite and really pushy when it comes to disability equality and rights in TV and film, and to be the best agent of ACs out there.
Sure, I want to read mine out. It doesn't stack up at all.
Do you want another postcard?
I might need another one. I've actually got two, so at least one of them.
Oh, you've got two.
One of them's got to be on par with these. So I'm going to use my position of power to embed the 5 A's in our editorial policies and process. If my Amazon family are here, it's coming. And then the other thing I'm going to do is try to rerun the survey, and I'm looking at Ali as my partner in crime.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Deborah.
The one thing I commit to do to support better disability inclusion in the TV industry is keep being me. I'm not quitting.
Oh my goodness, that wraps up the panel. Please give it up. Take all of our panelists, please give them a huge round of applause. Caroline, Lawrence, Miranda, Julie, and Deborah. Thanks, of course, to Jack for his ever powerful words. And of course, thank you to all of the members, associate members, partners, and stakeholders who are too many to mention, but are all together making TAP possible. I do get in my script a little bit of any final thoughts, so I'm going to take advantage of that, if I may. This has been ear and eye-opening for myself as well. I come into this from a position of, I had to hide who I was for a very long time because I did not feel that it was acceptable to be me. I was worried about losing jobs if I asked for extra help, and that has changed for myself literally only in the last 2 years, and it's because of projects like TAP and producers like Jules, hi Jules, who introduced me to TAP. In fact, she gets all the credit. But also what I've learned as well from today is that I need to also make more of an effort to make sure that my writing is inclusive, that when I write with people, I make sure that they are aware of inclusion, casting, and being in, and actually the representation that I represent in front of camera, the number of times that people message me and say, I have a facial twitch as part of my condition, and go, it was so nice to see someone with a twitch on television. I've never felt represented before, and make sure that I do continue to do that to the best of my ability as a role model, because it's sometimes easy to forget how widely we're seen when we are in front of camera on television, and how important that is to continue that. So, and most importantly, I think, is ask for the information. Ask is a huge one, because what we've seen here is a lot of things are happening, but I feel like a lot of us might go away and go, this is great, but how do I find this out? You have to keep asking. Just keep asking, where do I get this? All of the panelists here will be able to answer your questions. TAP is available, so ask those questions to be able to help you make your own progress. we are now going to head out of the Radio Theatre. Don't forget to hand in your postcards, okay? Because that is really just us allowing you to be accountable to yourselves for what you've promised here today, and that's us helping you. We are going to have drinks available back in the Media Cafe, so please don't rush off. Please stay and enjoy each other's company, and thanks so much for coming. Here's to full inclusion by 2030, and that is the year, not the time. Because that would only be 2.5 hours, which is ambitious, but I think a little too ambitious. So that's by the year 2030. Let's get it done. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for coming.